Okay, great. So the way this is going to work is we have some questions also from Twitter. I know some of you sent us tweeted questions using hashtag MySQL Sunday. So we have Jeff Wiz sitting there amongst you who's going to ask us some of those questions. But I'm going to get us started quickly asking a few questions here. So the first one actually is for you, Mårten. I'm still in a shock stage to see you actually keynoting at Oracle Open World. I never thought that that day is going to come. So how do you feel about that? How do you feel about MySQL being part of Oracle now?
So we always saw this show, we saw the name of it, Oracle Open World, and we felt that something was missing. And I think Oracle's now taken the first steps of becoming an open company with open source software. So I love being here. I think Oracle should be applauded and thanked for doing what it's doing here.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We really appreciate those comments. I think MySQL is now at the right home, so it's found a good home here. I'm going to ask the next question to Edward. Edward, why does it matter to Oracle that MySQL is open source?
I think a couple of reasons. One reason is that MySQL, because it's open source, is so widely distributed and used. I mean, having that vast community of folks who already know MySQL, who already use MySQL, has enabled it to find its way into enterprises that already use Oracle database and other databases, and it helps us market to those folks. It helps us sell to those folks, and the second way that's very important is that we get a lot of contributions from the community. I mean, not necessarily new functional implementations, but we do get a lot of meaningful technical contributions from the community and a lot of very meaningful ideas and thoughts about where to take MySQL. And I think I think there's no way that MySQL could be what it is today without that open source distribution. And we're going to continue that. I mean, we're going to continue enhancing the open source version of MySQL. And we're going to keep making sure that it evolves and remains current.
Great. Next question I'm going to ask Tomas. Tomas, you've been really busy. I mean, we heard in the opening keynote with all the work your team has been doing on products and all the work you've done in 6 months on various products. I want to ask you, how has the integration been with Oracle for you? And were there any surprises during the process?
Well, I mean, first of all, we went through an acquisition just 2 years prior. So the big leap into a big company, we had to adjust to that already in sort of a first step. So really no surprises there. I think, I was really happy to see the InnoDB team join with the MySQL team, as it should have been from day one, because they really belong together. So that's a positive thing, and that we managed to get that group together so quickly and deliver 5.5 together with the performance enhancements and so on. So positive. And well, I mean, just the fact that reporting to Edward and up to Larry directly, I mean, that just points to the importance that Oracle sees with MySQL and the status that it has. So I think it's been great.
Great. I'm going to ask one more question of Mårten, and then I'm going to hand off to Jeff to see if there's any Twitter questions. So, Mårten, you talked about the cloud, of course, and that seems to be the new buzzword these days. Everybody's talking about the cloud, and there's a lot of different types of companies out there. So, what do you think will it take for any of these companies to be successful in delivering cloud computing solutions to customers? And who do you think are the most interesting companies out there? So, how will they be, what's the criteria to be successful, and who's most interesting out there in cloud?
Well, this year of 2010 is very much the year of cloud companies coming out of the woodworks with announcements and stuff. And my advice is just that the best way to be successful in cloud is to ship software, not announcements. But there are many very exciting companies, and you see them. We're deep down on the cloud layer in infrastructure as a service, and there's platform as a service and software as a service. But around the infrastructure, you have very exciting companies doing management of cloud, deployment of cloud, billing and accounting. You have backup companies for the cloud. You have database scale-out companies around the cloud. You see now new platform as a service companies emerging. So there's a lot of really exciting, well-funded companies with great teams, great technology. So it's a fantastic new industry to be in.
Great. Jeff, Any questions from Twitter?
Yeah, we've had a few here. Edward, I think you touched on this briefly, but one of the questions that did come in was, will the majority of future enhancements be available in the community edition for MySQL?
I think when it comes to core server enhancements, I think definitely the vast majority of those will be in the community edition. And then, a good example of that would be, the various performance enhancements that we are announcing as part of 5.5.
Great. Another one for me?
Yeah, go ahead, one more.
Okay.
If you do that.
Actually, there were a lot of tweets about the announcement this morning on 5.5. And for those who weren't here in the early session, I wonder, Thomas, if you want to repeat what we announced about 5.5 and some of the improvements there.
Yeah, so around lunch today we announced the release candidate of 5.5. That means to us that quality-wise we feel it's GA quality, and we want to have community and customer feedback now on if they find something before we actually go GA. And we actually said that we will go GA before the end of the year, hopefully sooner. And the major improvements in it was, of course, the performance improvements are astonishing. So we're getting a lot of positive feedback on that. People are really appreciating the things that we're doing around replication and semi-synchronous replication. That's also a feature that people have been looking for. Around performance schema, being able to look into the internals of InnoDB and the server and actually be able to tune much more efficiently is something that means a lot to people. So, and the fact that we're making InnoDB the default storage engine, actually having an ACID database with foreign keys and crash recovery out of the box, a number of important things that we announced today.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. We hear a lot about NoSQL or NoSQL, and I want to ask each of the panelists here, what is your perspective on the impact NoSQL will have on the database market? So, Mårten, do you want to start with that?
I'd be happy to. So I agree with those who say that NoSQL should be interpreted as not only SQL, because I think the paradigm behind the SQL standard is so powerful. It will continue to live whether the products do so or not. So therefore I think the NoSQL movement will have huge positive impact on the industry, but not yet. There's a lot of excitement here and you need to start these projects very early, but I think it will take years for them to mature into the sort of significant use that we expect from them. But I'm sure it will happen.
Edward, Thomas, either of you want to?
Sure. I worked for Oracle for actually really long time. Okay, actually I joined in 1986, and there has never been a time when I worked for Oracle that there hasn't been some other sort of data access paradigm that often is less structured than SQL or less declarative than SQL, and there's definitely a place for that, and it's useful and often leading edge in terms of the technology that's used. But it seems to me that it always comes back to eventually deciding that I don't want to have to write so much code all the time to get stuff done, right? And so people want, in the end, I think, to have a declarative approach. Be able to write queries, be able to express operations in a compact algebraic style, right? And that's where it tends to come back to SQL. So I think Mårten in his keynote he mentioned the notion of well, it's maybe SQL over things that are get input, and actually we have that exactly in MySQL cluster, right? So MySQL cluster at the bottom is a very fast real-time get put store, and on top of that is a structured SQL. Now you can use the get put store if you want, or you can use the SQL interface if you want. And I think what will happen is there'll be a divergence into this kind of programmatic style get put various flavors, right? But again, it'll tend to come back to that structured form again.
Okay, great. I'm going to move to a different topic now. Since this is Oracle Open World, and I'm assuming we have a lot of Oracle customers in the audience that may be new to MySQL. So, do you have any recommendations for what applications they should be using MySQL as opposed to Oracle database?
Yeah, I think generally, applications that have very large scale, that have very high availability requirements, that have maybe very complex kind of query loads and extremely complex kind of analysis that you're trying to perform. I mean, that's stuff that Oracle is very good at, right? I think if you have applications that you're developing rapidly, that you're maybe deploying in a web style with sharding and some other techniques, I mean, that's something that MySQL is very good at. Now, there's always going to be some meeting point in the middle. And that, I think that what resolves it in that meeting point in the middle is what are my engineers comfortable with? What are my developers comfortable with? I mean, there's clearly some overlap, but distinction between folks who spend their life building applications involving MySQL and folks who spend their life building applications involving Oracle database. And our goal is really to make sure that Oracle customers who use Oracle database and other Oracle technologies are comfortable using MySQL alongside those other technologies. And a lot of that is kind of what I mentioned earlier, which is work to integrate MySQL into our infrastructure.
That's great. So actually, I have a follow-on question then for you, Tomas. Seems like there might be a large number of customers that use both Oracle and MySQL then. So what is your team working on to help those combined shops that are using both databases?
Well, I mean, so as you said, there's a large Oracle community out there that's already using MySQL, and to a large part they have they're sharing data of some sort. I mean, it's the same data. They want to be able to ship data between them. They want to be able to take backups. They want to be able to manage and monitor and their entire setup. Being the databases or being other applications, of course. They want to be able to audit. They want to be able to maybe share some sort of authentication third-party resource, and we're working on all of that. So in terms of Enterprise Monitor, Oracle Secure Backup, Oracle Audit Vault, and the other thing is the one point of entry for support. So if you have MySQL, or if you have the database there, or any other application from Oracle, you can enter support, and then you can get help. One place, one phone number.
So I'm going to ask actually Mårten a question now, and I know you haven't been involved with MySQL for a bit, so I won't ask you a MySQL specific question, but I'm going to ask you an open source specific question. I hope that's okay, yeah?
Absolutely.
So how do you think open source has evolved since your early days with MySQL, both from a community perspective and also from a business model perspective? What are the changes you've seen in open source?
That's a great question. So first of all, I never thought that open source is a business or an industry. I feel that open source is a production method and a distribution method, which means that the questions about business model will evolve on their own around it. But there has been a big change, which is the entry of open source into the corporation. And it was, I think, 3 or 4 years ago that Gartner said, if you don't use open source, you're stupid. And of course, they don't use the word stupid. They say you are strategically disadvantaged. But it means the same. And now we see, Oracle being a major open source vendor. Microsoft says they love open source, and I think they secretly do. You see open source on the mobile space with Android. You see Nokia open sourcing Symbian. You see the Eclipse Foundation doing well. So it's more institutionalized, and you have fewer new individual heroes. Like, who is the Linus Torvalds of today? There is nobody shining like he shone. So back then it was very much driven by some few very strong individuals, and now it's driven by large orchestrated groups, which will have its effect. For some it will be more boring because it's corporate, but at the same time it will also be more dependable and perhaps more successful.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, any questions that you want to ask from Twitter?
Actually, there was just one more question, and Monica, it's for you. We got a request as to if the MySQL Sunday sessions will be posted online.
Oh, definitely. All Oracle Open World attendees have access to the sessions through the Open World site. I think a week later, you can not only get the PowerPoints, but also the audio files from the sessions as well. So that's definitely a yes. we are coming down to our 5 o'clock time slot here, so I'm going to ask one more question before we end the panel. And since we were talking about open source, I'm going to ask each of the panelists here to maybe describe what do you think will be the role of open source in general and MySQL in particular in cloud-based architectures. And I know, Mårten, you touched upon it a bit in your presentation, so maybe you can start with it and then we can go across the panel here. So the role of open source in general and MySQL specifically in cloud-based architectures.
I believe MySQL already is the dominant cloud database and will continue to be so for 5, 10, 15 years. I think there's a reason why Amazon offers it as a service under the name of RDS, why Google offers it in the App Engine. So I think there are enormous potential for MySQL in the cloud. And at the same time, the new vendors are coming up, but MySQL is amazingly dominant, and I think it will continue to be so.
I think, of course, open source and in the cloud will happen, but we will see also other vendors offering non-open source when vendors offering cloud offerings, and we're seeing that more or less successfully being done. But I think that's going to happen also to a large extent moving forward.
I think if you look at the technologies that folks describe as cloud computing and the infrastructures they build up, there's obviously a large open source component. Just looking at the products that Oracle delivers, in our Fusion middleware, we use Apache web server and lots of open source Java components, right? We are in the Linux business, and Linux is clearly the leading operating system for web-based and cloud-based implementations, right? Our own virtualization technology for x86 is based on an open source hypervisor, Xen, right? So I think as people move to elastic computing models, open source is, it's there to stay. It's just an integral part of the technology that people use. Now, MySQL, one of the nice properties of MySQL is its implementation structure lends itself to being manipulated programmatically. It's straightforward to script MySQL. It's easy to deploy it automatically. It's easy to write programs around MySQL that do interesting things with it, right? And I think that is going to continue. Our focus is making sure that MySQL stays good at what it's already good at, right? And so I think that's going to mean that it's going to be a natural choice for many developers who are building cloud-based applications and are interested in cloud-based deployment.
Great. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind everybody there's a keynote at 5:30 p.m. with Larry Ellison and Safra Katz. We'd love for all of you to join us there. And with that, I don't know if any of you have any closing remarks for the panel. If you do, we are happy to take those.
Well, I just want to say thank you, first of all, to Mårten for taking the time out to come speak to us today. I'm sure we all really appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you realized from all the content that was presented that Oracle is very serious about investing in MySQL, and that it's not just talk, we are actually doing it with all the product releases that you see. So thank you again for joining us, and this is the first MySQL Sunday. We hope to have an even better program for you next year. Thank you again.